My name is Claire Matthews, and this morning started like any other. I sat in my office on the 27th floor, overlooking Manhattan. From here, the city looked like a living organism. Yellow cabs pulsing like blood cells, people rushing along the sidewalks like nerves firing. The glass wall in front of me was spotless, reflecting the sunlight, but all I noticed was my own reflection staring back, calm, polished, untouchable. The mahogany desk in front of me gleamed, its edges sharp as though they had been carved for war. My nails, painted a muted rose, tapped against it in rhythm with the antique clock behind me. Everything here was mine, built with sweat, sacrifice, and silence. Then my phone buzzed. A vibration so sharp, it sliced through the stillness. It was Daniel Rhodes, my attorney. His voice was tight, urgent. "Claire, you need to know this. Your brother, he's in meetings with potential buyers. He's presenting himself as the majority owner of Matthews Industries. Contracts are already being drafted." For a second, I said nothing. My brother, Ethan Matthews. I could almost see his smug face, the way he always looked at me like I was decoration, not substance. Like a fragile little sister whose role was to smile and stay out of the way. I let out a quiet laugh, not loud, not cruel, just enough to taste the irony. If only Ethan knew what I had done years ago. If only he understood that the papers he thought he owned had already been rewritten. The company wasn't his to sell. It never was. I wasn't always the woman sitting in a Manhattan high-rise, sipping coffee from a porcelain cup. Years ago, I was just Ethan's little sister, the one he brushed aside whenever the conversation turned to business. Back then, we lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Boston, in a house that smelled like cedar and old books. Our father's study was lined with shelves of ledgers, stock reports, and contracts. That room was Ethan's throne. For me, it was a battlefield. I still remember the night everything changed. I was 23, freshly graduated with honors in finance. My hands clutched a portfolio of ideas, strategies to expand the small logistics firm our father had left us. I had worked on it for months, believing I could prove myself. Ethan sat at the head of the long oak table, a glass of bourbon in his hand. His friends, all smug and suited, lounged around him like loyal soldiers. When I started to explain my proposal, Ethan cut me off with a chuckle. "Claire," he said, swirling his drink, "this isn't a classroom. This is real business. Leave the heavy lifting to the people who actually know what they're doing." Heat rose to my cheeks. My voice trembled, but I pressed on. "I do know what I'm doing. If you just listen." He slammed his glass down. The sound echoed through the room. "You'll never run this company. You're too soft. Too emotional. Stick to, I don't know, charity work. Something harmless." His friends laughed, and that laughter cut deeper than his words. I gathered my papers with shaking hands. My throat was tight, but I refused to let the tears fall in front of him. That was the night I realized, no matter what I achieved, Ethan would never see me as anything more than his fragile little sister. As I turned to leave, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my grandmother, Margaret Hale. She pressed something into my palm, her old silver fountain pen. Her voice was steady, warm. "Paper holds power, Claire. Don't ever let anyone else write your story." I walked out that night with nothing but that pen and my fury. But I made myself a promise. Ethan would regret underestimating me. And one day, he would have no choice but to read the story I wrote. The years that followed were not glamorous. Success doesn't arrive gift-wrapped. It crawls, it stumbles, it bruises. And I learned that the hard way. When I left Boston, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. The walls were thin, the radiator rattled at night, and my office was nothing more than a wobbly desk wedged between the bed and the window. I worked 3 part-time jobs, bookkeeping for a florist, managing accounts for a dry-cleaning business, tutoring finance students online, all while secretly sketching the blueprint for something bigger. That silver fountain pen never left my desk. Every contract draft, every budget sheet, every dream, I signed with it like a quiet oath to myself. Still, there were nights I wanted to give up. Nights I sat on the floor with takeout boxes and unpaid bills, staring at numbers that didn't add up. I'd whisper to myself, maybe Ethan was right. Maybe I can't do this. But then I'd remember the laughter in that oak-paneled room, the way he dismissed me like dust. That memory lit a fire under me. If pain was fuel, I was burning. My break came when I met Catherine Doyle, a seasoned venture capitalist. I was terrified walking into her office, a woman known for cutting through weakness like a scalpel. But when I pitched her my idea for a logistics tech platform, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. "You've got guts, Claire," she said. "And more importantly, you've got numbers that work. I'll back you." With Catherine's investment, I finally built what would later become Matthews Industries. Not the family relic Ethan sat on, but a rebirth, sleek, modern mine. The early years were brutal. I worked 16-hour days, cycled through failed hires, lost sleep over software bugs, and ate more instant noodles than I'd care to admit. I was underestimated at every investor meeting. Men twice my age spoke over me, questioned my math, patted my shoulder like I was a child. But slowly, victories came. The first major client, a retail chain in Chicago. The first profitable quarter. The first office space where the windows didn't rattle when it rained. And through it all, I told Ethan nothing. On family calls, I kept my voice light. "Yeah, I'm keeping busy just freelancing here and there." I let him believe I was floating on scraps. I let him think his dismissive prophecy had come true. But behind the curtain, I was changing everything. When I finally had the chance to acquire controlling shares of the family's old company, the one Ethan thought was his kingdom, I didn't hesitate. I filed the ownership papers myself. My name, my pen, my power. From that moment, the story shifted. Ethan still thought he was the heir. He still strutted around with that bourbon glass confidence. But I knew the truth. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building an empire. It was a Thursday morning when Ethan finally walked into my office, swagger painted across his face like always. He wasn't alone. 2 men in tailored suits followed him, their briefcases gleaming, their expressions calculated. He didn't even look around at first. He just strode in, clapping his hands together. "Claire, just the person I wanted to see." I leaned back in my chair, perfectly still, perfectly composed. "Really? Because it seems like you've been making a lot of moves without me." He chuckled, ignoring the edge in my voice. "Don't be so dramatic. You'll thank me for this. We're about to make history. I've got buyers lined up, serious people, and they're ready to take Matthews Industries global. Imagine the payday." The 2 men, clearly his serious people, stood silently, scanning my office. Their eyes lingered on the abstract art hanging on the wall, the awards on the shelf, the view of the skyline. They were trying to measure me, to piece together what Ethan hadn't told them. I waited. Silence can be more dangerous than words. Finally, I rose from my chair. The sound of my heels against the hardwood floor echoed sharp and deliberate. "Ethan, before you embarrass yourself any further, let me ask you something. Exactly what are you trying to sell?" He smirked, pulling a folder from his briefcase and tossing it onto my desk. "The company. Our company. And, before you start panicking, relax. I've already taken care of everything. Majority ownership, contracts, legalities. It's done." I opened the folder slowly, running my fingers across the pages as if they were fragile. Then I looked up at him. "You think you own the majority?" "Of course I do," he said, raising his chin. "Dad left it to me. Everyone knows that." I let the silence stretch. Then, with the faintest smile, I slid a different folder across the desk toward him. "Read this." He frowned, flipping it open. His eyes moved over the legal documents, notarized, dated, sealed. And with every line he read, the color drained from his face. "I transferred the ownership years ago," I said softly. "All of it. Into my name. Matthews Industries doesn't belong to you, Ethan. It never did." The 2 buyers exchanged uneasy glances. One of them cleared his throat. "Mr. Matthews, you told us." Ethan slammed the folder shut, his face flushed crimson. "This is some kind of trick. You forged this." I laughed. Not bitter this time, but rich, genuine. "That signature you see? That's Dad's. That's the board's. And this." I held up the silver fountain pen between my fingers, letting the light catch its polished surface. "This is the pen I used to sign every page. Paper holds power, remember? You should have paid attention." For the first time in my life, I watched Ethan falter. His bravado cracked, his shoulders slumped. The buyers stood. "We'll be in touch," one muttered, clearly eager to distance themselves from his humiliation. They left without another word. The office door clicked shut, leaving just the two of us. Ethan's voice broke the silence, low and almost pleading. You planned this?" I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "No. I built this. There's a difference." He stared at the documents one more time, then back at me. For once, he had no comeback, no smirk, no laughter. And in that silence, the balance of power shifted. For the first time in my life, Ethan Matthews wasn't the one in control. I was. Ethan stood frozen in front of my desk, the papers spread out like evidence of his downfall. His face was pale, his jaw tight, and for once, there was no smugness to hide behind. I walked back to my chair, sat down slowly, and folded my hands in front of me. My tone was calm, not mocking, not cruel, just final. "You tried to sell something that didn't belong to you, Ethan. You almost destroyed what I've spent years building. If you want any place in this company, there will be conditions." His head jerked up. "Conditions?" "Yes." My voice didn't waver. "You've spent your entire life acting entitled. Acting like I was disposable. That ends today. If you want to be part of Matthews Industries, you'll work for it from the bottom up." He scoffed, but the sound cracked. "You expect me to take orders from you?" "No," I said evenly. "I expect you to learn. You'll start in operations, no office, no assistant, no boardroom meetings. You'll learn how this company functions at its core. If you can't handle that, then you have no place here." His silence told me everything. For Ethan, it wasn't the work that scared him. It was the humiliation. I leaned forward. "And there's more. You'll drop the arrogance. The late-night drinking, the reckless spending, the showboating with people's livelihoods. If you want to lead, you earn respect. You don't buy it." He swallowed hard, his hands curling into fists at his sides. My voice softened slightly, though I kept the steel beneath it. "Ethan, I don't hate you. But I refuse to let your pride ruin what I've built. Dad gave us both a legacy. You treated it like a birthright. I treated it like a responsibility. That's the difference between us." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "Don't argue. Think." For a moment, the room was heavy with silence. I could almost see the memories flickering behind his eyes. Every time he had laughed at me, dismissed me, pushed me aside. And now here I was, dictating the terms. "Finally," he muttered. "And if I don't agree?" I smiled faintly. "Then you walk away. No shares. No influence. Nothing. Matthews Industries goes on without you, and you'll have to live with the fact that your little sister did what you never could." His face twisted, anger, shame, confusion all at once. But underneath, I saw something else flicker for the first time. Doubt. I leaned back, giving him space to absorb it. "The choice is yours. Stay and rebuild yourself. Or leave and stay exactly who you've always been." For once, Ethan Matthews had no quick answer. And that silence was all the power I needed. Days turned into weeks after that confrontation. Ethan didn't storm out the way I half expected him to. He showed up. Quietly, awkwardly, but he showed up. At first, the staff didn't know what to make of him. The once arrogant Matthews working side by side with warehouse managers, learning schedules, routes, and the grind of operations. He struggled. He fumbled with software, dropped more than a few boxes, and bit back his pride when younger employees corrected him. But for the first time, I saw humility trying to break through the cracks of his ego. My family, too, began to shift. My mother called me one evening, her voice softer than I'd heard in years. "Claire, I'm proud of you. We all are. Maybe we should have seen it sooner. I didn't say much. Sometimes silence carries more forgiveness than words. Late one night, I sat alone in my office. The city glittered outside the glass, 1,000 lights blinking like stars. On my desk lay the silver fountain pen, worn now, but still shining. I picked it up, feeling the weight of it in my hand. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Paper holds power, Claire. Don't ever let anyone else write your story. I smiled because she was right. For years, Ethan tried to write me out of the narrative. For years, I let his voice drown out mine. But the truth was simple. I had always been the author. He just never realized it. The door to my office opened, and Ethan stepped in quietly. No arrogance this time. Just a tired man trying to find his footing. Claire, he said, his voice rough. I'm trying. I nodded. That's all I ask. He left, and I looked back out at the skyline. The city pulsed with possibility, just as it had the morning my lawyer first called. Only now, I wasn't bracing for battle. I was standing in victory. I pressed the pen to paper one last time, signing off on a new expansion deal that would take Matthews Industries overseas. The ink bled smooth and certain, sealing yet another chapter. And as the pen left the page, I whispered the truth that had carried me through it all. My brother tried to sell my company, not knowing I'd already sold my weakness.